Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Double D, and I wanted to show off this Warmoth build that I found about a year ago. You can see that body was pretty scratched up. It just had like a thin layer of paint, but I loved the electronics layout, and I loved that it went so well with my Floyd Rose heavily modified STRAT, which has the same electronics. So I used it live for a little while. I used both of those live for a bit, and I decided, you know what, I really like this guitar. I've enjoyed playing it. I'm going to get some stuff and do something special with it. So I grabbed Rustoleum, their Imagine line, color shift paint. It's pink champagne. A bunch of cans of that, a bunch of cans of lacquer, all of the clear tone polishing compounds and swirl remover. You want shop towels. You're going to want 1,000 to 5,000 grit sandpaper and something like naphtha. I actually use charcoal lighter fluid. I know it's not the same, but look how good it came out. You'll want to remove, obviously, all the hardware, the pickguard, all of that kind of stuff. I decided I was going to add a kill switch to this particular setup, and I really like it. Low profile, little itty bitty guy, got off Amazon for like $7. Wire it right up to your output jack. So I just really removed the wires from my output jack, and I removed the ground line from the spring claw, which is in the back of the body right there in that channel. And then I had to really do a lot of work on the body. I added liquid wood, and I really should have used BONDO because the wood was soft, and what I used to fill in the holes from the guy's relic job really, it just didn't sit very well. However, after painting it black and doing 3 full layers and letting it dry, I decided I wasn't going to go ahead and do the whole guitar back again. Nobody's really going to see it, and hey, scars are scars. That's what's fun about life, right? Yeah, it's a blast. Got my own. Anyway, you want to use a black coat. You can't just apply the color shift over any old color. You have to do the black coat. I sanded that back. 800 grit wet sand. Here's the can if you want to see it. Really, you got to take the label off and then write L and C on the cans. I'll get into that in a little bit, but what you want to do is also keep these cans warmed up. Put them in some water, some warm water for about 15 minutes. That helps all the particulates in there flow a little bit better. You can see in the light a little bit better than I could see while I was painting where I don't quite get an overlap. I'm going for about a 50% overlap. And just that first coat alone, you can see how much sparkle and sheen it adds to the guitar body. It really creates like a galaxy kind of effect, but I definitely want to go a lot deeper, a lot more into the color shifting. This purple, it's not what I'm going for. So what I really recommend you doing is not what I just did here, which is doing the sides 2 times in a row. You should do the sides, do the entire back, flip it over, do the front, and then, you kind of fill in your outlines from the sides. I had a lot of problem with overspray during my first couple of days here, just trying to get to learn how this stuff flows out. It doesn't spread like color. The particulates in there can get clogged up. You got to shake that can a lot, and you just got to keep everything in there moving and warm. I highly recommend storing it in water, taking the label off. The label will soak up water. You won't even realize it's there. Even if you wipe it down real well, it gets in there. So you can see I'm going for the 50% overlap. I really want to coat the guitar really well, but don't go too heavy. Don't go too thick. Wait 20 minutes after each layer. After you do 3 layers, we'll call that a coat. And the goal is to work in a coat of, the goal is to work a coat a day. So about the course of an hour, do 3 layers every 20 minutes or so. And I applied the same thing with the follow-up lacquer. So I'm going to now let this dry, like I said, for about 20 minutes. I'm going to apply another layer, let that dry for 20 minutes, and then I'll do my final one. And you can see, there it is. It's getting a lot darker, but way too heavy. I put it on way too heavy, and that overspray in those corners, I really paid the price for. So I kind of have to Except here at this point, okay, I got to run out and get a couple more cans. And I managed to find another Michael's that had the exact same brand and all that kind of stuff. But you can see as it starts to dry, there's some glossy spots, there's non-glossy spots. We'll get it real glossy by the end of this project, but not quite the look I was going for. After it dries overnight, it does kind of start to gloss up a little bit, or I guess solidify. I guess as the lacquer kind of settles in and expands into itself, it kind of fills the body out. But you can see it's still real patchy after just one coat or 3 layers. So back to the paint booth later that night. This is just kind of a couple of angles. You can see the shift isn't very dramatic. Still very, very dark. So, but add a few more layers, and later on that evening, as it's starting to dry out, it starts to lighten up a little bit more. You could really see the scarring underneath as the light hits certain areas. But you can also start to see the champagne color really start to come out. And I don't like the black layer that I still see. So I knew I wanted to keep on going. I knew I wanted to just go until I couldn't really see black coats or any of that black underfinish at all. And I started pacing myself a little bit better while using this paint. I started just kind of using thinner layers as I was going, doing it real quick, and started getting a really good effect. So here we are after some more coats. It really came out good, except these sides here where I've been still just doing too much overspray. It just started to really build up. You can see there in the light where even at the top horn there, I already have just a little too much gooping, but around most of the body, it's starting to really look good. And then after a night of sitting, throwing a little hardware on there, I mean, look, you can really start to see the defined pink into champagne line. It's not quite as dark of a purple anymore, and it's really starting to get close to what I want. So by this point, I'm pretty excited, and I figured, oh, okay, I'm just going to keep on going, and you can really start to see the shift has become much more dramatic. I still see a lot of black in certain angles. So if this is what you want, you could probably stop here. This is about 3 cans, but I'm going to keep on going. They advise you don't wet sand between layers. The only reason I ended up doing that is this. That crackling, oh my gosh, it took me forever to kind of push it all back together. I mean, I literally was using my fingers and pushing it back together after it had kind of dried for a couple of hours, and I managed to get it to the point where, okay, it's stuck back. It's almost like it's a wrap, it's almost like it goes on in a wrap. But I sanded it down real well with 800 and some soapy water, and I got it to the point of being smooth, and that was my goal. And I had a couple more cans that I could work with, so I wanted to finish up a couple of other spots. Anywhere that it gets to black like that, when you're doing this, you really got to start adding more and more layers. And that's one of the reasons why they recommend light layers in these coats. And, take your time, let it dry before you go gooping more on here. So I found a more effective way for me to do this was to either hold it in my hand and do my spraying, or even put it on a table. So, and you can see as these layers build up, the colors really just start to pop from every angle that you look. It starts to become a different color, and this dark purple starts to go away, and you start to see a lot of that gold. So I'm just gently trying to touch in the areas where I had some issues, and then I feather in, or just kind of slowly blow in from a little bit of a distance over any of those kind of spots that I sanded down to black. Like that area, that long streak there is under the pick guard. Actually came out really well, but I didn't worry about it too much, but it did actually end up filling it in. So what I was doing was generally setting my timer for about 15 minutes. I would come back to the guitar and do a whole nother round all over the entire body. 20 minutes, I set it for 15 minutes so that I could come back and get the can out of the water and dry it off real well, shake it up, get it going for a couple of minutes, and then get myself set up. So here's the back. You can really see the overlap pretty well in this one. And finally, at this angle, I could see just a little bit better what I was doing. When I was on the ground and in the bad light, I really couldn't see. And I paid the price. I paid the price by having to get a couple of extra cans and doing a lot of extra sanding. But it's really starting to fill out nicely. And so an hour later, after more and more layers, here we're really starting to see that gold of the champagne color and less purple all around, a little more pink, and definitely defined lines. I mean, look at that line. I love that. And you can see that mess of lacquer that I created is slowly filling in. I'll over the course of the next night or two of adding layers, I slowly kind of fill that in. I didn't really have to sand it back anymore, but I did start filling it in, and the layers did eventually work out to a smooth coat in those areas. And you really have to kind of look in those spots to see those issues. But most of the body came out really, really good. And let it dry. And in the morning, I was really happy with how, look at the corners on the sides are really, the angles are all really popping now. Paige is just amazed. And the hardware all really looks good and reflective. And you come from a different angle and it's not quite as golden. It's a little more pinky than purple. And I just, at that point, I said, okay, I think I'm pretty good. I think what I need to do is just make sure I've touched up all my areas well enough and start laying some lacquer down, because really this stuff is lacquer, and lacquer takes a long time to cure. It takes about 10 days to cure. So I figured, okay, a little more sanding, a little bit more of the color shift paint, because you can see I just wanted to smooth out all of these lines. A little bit more of the color shift paint, touch up these areas, and get it real smooth and happy looking. And once I had enough of the color shift paint on in all of the problem areas, I knew that the lacquer would then really get in and continue to expand and fill out the body and smooth itself out, especially doing this kind of sanding. I guess I should have mentioned that I did this wet sanding every evening before I would start painting, and then I would wipe it off real well with the lighter fluid and get all of the gook off of it, all of that white haze off of it. And I shouldn't have done that, but I only did it because I had to touch it up. They recommend do not doing that because it does remove the particulates, but I had enough cans that I could keep building it up and building it up. That's the only reason I decided to really kind of do that. I stayed very easy on these parts. I just didn't want to really dig in and take away any of the effect that's already been created. But I just wanted to make sure I had those spots, like right there, smoothed out so that when the lacquer kept on going and expanding into itself, it would have a good area to work with once I had to buff that lacquer back down, sand it and do the final buff and polish routine. So that was probably the longest part, but also the most satisfying. I'll link a couple of really cool videos that helped me out. Stu Mack did a great series with another channel all about how to properly finish a guitar. I got a lot of tips from that, so I'll make sure I link that down below. But here we are getting ready to do my final shift layers, and it was just so satisfying seeing this final bit of this color go on. So there's that feathering where I just kind of made sure I sprayed a little bit into an area from a bit of a distance, any of the area where I had a bit of a spot or a blackened area where I had to sand back too much, and I took away all of that clear color shift area, or not the clear area, but the color shift area. So sanding and all of that with this stuff, they recommend don't do it. I really only did it because I had to. I wanted to smooth it out. Try to do just a few days. After about 3 or 4 days of this, you'll see this kind of a result. I guess it was about 20 some days this whole project took. 10 of the days was the final cure for the last round of lacquer. So here I am just kind of, after I do the body on this last one, I just kind of from a distance spray it in a couple of spots and just do a final blow over. You're never going to get this part to look gloss, shine perfect like factory dipped in glass look, but man, you can really get a lot of nice color shifts. Already you can see just from the coats that I've done that it's really looking good. So I knew that after doing everything here, by the end of this night of painting the last round of color shift, I'd be okay to start throwing some lacquer on. And that chipping and stuff, it really starts to just fade away. It looks a little bit like glazing, but man, the pink, ooh, that's hot. I love it. It's really good looking. So, of course, in the morning, I like to give it a final look before I head off to work for the day, just to see how it's doing. And you can see you really got to sit there and look for any of those kind of imperfections. You really got to grab the body and look at it. And this is, again, before I've done any of the final lacquer coats. I'll try to get some shots of it, of those areas here at the very end. I'll play a little bit of it at the end, but mostly what I really want you to know about, oh yeah, and I did that. I had to do the back plate. The back plate. I had to do that, of course. So, and it came out really well. I only had to do a couple of coats of color shift there for that, and I just made sure that I scraped it down really well. So there it is. There's the final round of layers and coats before I do my lacquer. There's just one full coat, and here it is after, gosh, I guess about 12 or 15, something like that, a number of coats. And I'm really happy. I love the way it looks with that roasted maple neck. This Warmoth build has not cost me very much. I managed to get it used. I was very, very lucky. So I had to let it sit for a couple of days just because I got pretty busy. But there's the lacquer curing in hot water. Here's where I learned my lesson about it, about taking the label off. And, eventually you're going to want some of this. I ended up not using the 800 at this point for any of my in-between coat wet sanding. I just used 1000 because I really wanted to be gentle. But you can see I kind of fill in the sides here. I wanted to make sure that it was laying real smooth in any of my problem areas. By doing the sides, and then once you get to the top and the back, you kind of fill in those lines. Now I have those overspray marks and I know where to go, and I just kind of try to just go as evenly across the body as I can. And this is, I think this was my first coat of lacquer. So this is the first layer of the first coat going on, and it really, because it was the same line of Rustoleum, their Imagine line, I had no problems at this point with the lacquer. As long as I went thin, I had no problems with the lacquer and the color shift paint kind of interfering with each other or interacting in any sort of a way. So obviously you want to, when you flip your stuff over, make sure you have something that you balance it on. Don't just pop it down on the cardboard. Never put the guitar onto anything at this point, overnight or anything. Make sure you have it propped up on something. A lot of guys will use like a little wooden triangular wedge. I had just a spare camera stand sitting around. I really shouldn't have used that because it gave me a couple issues later, because it just was too big and it had too much surface area, so it would grab the lacquer and then stick. And, that's the way it was. Live and learn, paint and learn, problem after problem, but it still, as you can see, it's starting to come out really great. So here's now 3 layers, my first full coat of the lacquer, and those sides are just, filling in great. The glazing effect that was there is really reduced along these sides now. And it just will keep expanding. The lacquer expands. As the aerosol product leaves the lacquer expands and fills out those areas. That's why you don't want to put too much on, because it goops up real quick. It's trying to flatten itself out across the body. So, and here's, again, a quick look at the guitar the next morning. You can see the one spot where it had gotten black, but you can see the other spot that was really blackened. Fills in really well. But you see the orange peeling going on there. It's kind of built into it, but the final sandouts and stuff like that within the lacquer will smooth all that out. Between each of these rounds of lacquer, I was doing wet sanding just like you saw me doing before. I'd take 1000 grit at that point and hit the body very gently and get rid of any of the shine. You get it down to like a satin smooth spot. I'll show that here later on. There's a couple of spots where I did actually get the camera where you could really see the difference between what has been sanded and what hasn't been. So make sure you wipe it down real well and let all that stuff dry before you do another round. So I did that for 5 days, and now here it is. It cured for 10 days. Still a touch of glazing within there, but really very minimal looking. And man, the lacquer has just, it's hardened up. It's made that color shift pop even more. And so that champagne just smoothly just kind of blends into the pinks even more in the light. And you can see this orange peel is there, the orange peel effect. I want a perfect reflection of that window right there. And it's just a little broken up, and that's not necessarily because of the sparkle. That's just the natural way that the lacquer has settled and finished into the body. So what I need to do is a little more level sanding and then buff it out with the 3 bottles of product that I got from Stu Mac, those 2 compounds and then the swirl remover. But you can see the fine lines of the window are just a little bit broken up. The reflections are there though, man. I mean, that sparkle looks great. So I really don't see black underneath of it anymore. I was very happy with it. So here's the 3-inch pads that I got off Amazon, and from here I moved to 1500 to up to 2000, and then 2500 grit, and then 3000 grit, and then here's a look at the color tone compounds and polishes. I got these off Stu Mac. I started with the medium and then moved over to the fine. I really didn't need the medium, but after doing my wet sands and getting nice and even, I did the polishes, the compounds, and then the polishes, and all of that. So here's just a final look. I'm not going to show you the 6 hours of me literally sanding this out, but this is me here with I think the 2000 at this point. I think I had 2000 on here. And my final real mistake here in this build, I really should have just done this top all by hand, because you can still burn through that lacquer. Even though I have 10, 12, 15 layers of lacquer on here at this point, you'd still burn through it really quickly and really easily. So I'm trying to keep this tool as flat as possible and not hit any of my round spots. I'm trying to move. I'm trying to keep that bottle of soapy water by me at all times. I sprayed the body down already. I continually spray that body down anytime I start to feel or even see the body drop a little bit. You know, I make sure I hit that area. So you can see I'm working in sections so I can really keep track of my work. And I'm hitting it with the water. I keep it on the body at all times. I keep the pad a little wet. You know, I'd spray the pad every once in a while. And you can basically take it down to satin by the time you get to about 3000. And it'll look good if that's what you want, a satin finish. But it will not shift anywhere near as well as it will if you get a full-on gloss coat like we're going to do here. So I'm just going to continue to, now that I have a nice level sand, I'm going to continue to buff this out. So you can see right up there where the bridge is and right there where the input jack would be, it's too shiny. See, those are the spots I need to kind of dull out. So at this point, the 2000 is I guess this is probably 2000 at this point. The 2000 is doing a good job of smoothing it out, especially wet like that. Just don't stay in any one spot. So I'm going to keep on going. I'm going to wipe some of the stuff off. And you want to keep the body clean. You don't want to keep letting that lacquer build up, just stay on there. So after I did one round like that, I add some more water, I get the pad wet, you know, get everything kind of going, smooth it out over again, keep going. Then you change to another pad and do the same thing. And then you change to another pad. And as you keep going through this, it stops becoming quite so scratched up looking, and it starts to become very, very pristine looking. It's like we're shining rocks. People that polish rocks use the same technique. People that polish glass and such, this is just what you do. And was a great experience. This is my first time ever doing a full-on gloss like this. I've done stains, and I've done just, you know, painted bodies, you know, and then some clear coat or something like that. But here comes my last problem with the guitar. And like I said, this happens so quickly. And I'm on, I think, 2000 at this point. But right here, oh, boy, yep, I mean, just, so the only thing I can really do at that point would have been to start all over again, because as you saw, anything that gets black, it just doesn't take the color shift immediately. You have to build those layers up. So I'd end up with the purple spot and then a whole bunch of other stuff, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna put a little bitty sticker right there. And you know, I managed to find like the snarliest little snarky face just going, "Arr!" And I stuck him right there, just as a little reminder, Dave, to just be patient. But, you know, and look, you can still see, as I'm leveling this all out, you can see some of those scars are reflecting still in the light, but you can really start to see how the goal is to get it to a pretty even satin look. See, there's a spot that's still a little bit shiny, so I'm going to need to kind of get to that and just make sure that everything around the whole body is that same kind of a thing. And after using the medium compounds with the 3mm buff pads that I had, and then the final swirl remover, I can sit and really look back and say whether or not I've gotten it to the point where I want it. I can't see the LEDs yet, so I needed to use the swirl remover after all of my buffs, and look at that. And when you do that, that actually helps reveal any other spot that you might have to go back on. You see there by the output jack there, it's just a little bit dull. Just a little dull, so I need to kind of hit that area with the medium a little bit more. Right there to the left of the jack, it's just a little dull. So I did that a little bit more and finished it up, and then I put all the electronics on it, and I got this. First off, the Super V trem system is awesome. I love it. The Duncan pickup that I have in there is just amazing. In certain lights, this has just a very unique pink look to it. I thought I might want to change out the pickguard, but I'm really happy with actually the dark color of the pickguard, going against the golds and the purples and the pinks. I'm just really happy with the way it came out. I hope you guys are too. I think Rustoleum has a really good product here. It's tough to work with. I hope that I was able to help you guys. And if this is something you're thinking about doing, maybe make that final decision on whether or not you want to do it. This thing will be gig ready from here on out. Thanks for watching. It's me, Double. This is Double D Guitar. I appreciate you being here, checking out my color shift guitar. I'm sure you will see it in many videos to come. Thank you, guys.